Hello, Exiles. Today we're going to do something a little different, because we're kind of getting our way into 0.3 League. Things are off to the races, and we're looking back on the good, the bad, the Abyss, the trading, the Act 4, all very good things, all very well liked. And some of the bad, like maybe the final implementation of Sprint leaves a lot to be desired. You know, it doesn't need ship steering. It doesn't need to stun you instantly on a single hit. It honestly doesn't even need to stun you. I don't understand why it doesn't just, like, stop your sprint and put it on cooldown for 5 seconds. That seems a lot more logical to me, personally, but that's neither here nor there. This is meant to be in the spirit of feedback, but also a little bit talking about the game design of Path of Exile 2 and concerns going forward. One of the big community discussions right now is a very enthusiastic Thorns expert who maybe thinks he knows a lot more about Poe 1 than he does by, like, a lot. Kind of made statements about feedback. And you know what? Credit where it's due. We should be giving more in-depth feedback. And I think one place where there's kind of a universal agreement that maybe the implementation isn't the best was Infusions, especially Infusions, because Infusions have they have issues. You have to pick them up, which means now you're running around, and if there's degens or ground effects, you can't get to your infusion. It feels bad to get stuck in that situation. And then on top of that, the skills that make use of the infusions are often now balanced around giving you an incentive to use infusions, which means that they don't stand very well on their own, which is, again, its own rather egregious problem. On top of that, and I think maybe the biggest sin, is that what infusions do is very specific, and because it's all designed in-house in the elemental tree, you have this situation where everything now designed for the elemental tree is a bit suffocated, right? New stuff is now either always going to generate an infusion, make use of an infusion, or it's going to be strong on its own, which then threatens to invalidate the viability of the entire infusion system that applies to so many other skills. It's not a great situation. It's probably not sustainable. Generally, the infusion system we have now is very undertuned because it either takes too much time to set up, the numbers just aren't there, or because the base skill is so hobbled by needing the infusion that anytime you don't have it, the gameplay feels bad or clunky. Granted, through all of that, there's outliers where things look good, feel good, the payoff is there. I think that's kind of a band-aid situation, though, that doesn't really address the greater issue, and certainly doesn't address the greater issue of Path of Exile 2's suffering build diversity, which is a situation where I think that infusions really show them knuckling down and possibly going in the wrong direction. We have an entire system meant to make these skills only work with these other skills. They're like, man, remember when Flame Wall gave projectile damage? What if we neutered that? Because they did. This used to be a lot stronger. I have a level 13 gem right now, uncut gem. 14 to 22 added fire damage for a skill you have to set up in advance is pitiful. No one is going to invest 92 intel points on a crossbow or bow character to get all of this. Oh, well, currently they are, because energy shield is very strong, so the people playing crossbow and bow skills are probably investing enough to at least use equipment. And they're still not using flame wall, actually, is what I should add to that, unless they're looking for a reason to ignite. The point being, cross-pollination in the game is kind of at an all-time low right now. You live in your archetype, and if you go outside of it, the interaction might get nerfed, just because it doesn't fit with the developer's design. And that's dangerous, because, you know, people get burned and they go play another game and eventually they stop coming back, because who wants to sit down and try to do something creative in Path of Exile 2 if the moment it shows any sort of potential it gets nerfed into oblivion? All right, it would be one thing if they reined it in because the interaction was too strong. It's another thing when they just nuke it from orbit and they're like, okay, you had your fun for 1 league, now get out. Which I believe there was a spear build that involved poisoning with the Lorata Splinter from last league that just got absolutely nuked from orbit by making it so you couldn't use elemental damage anymore. But anyway, this is intended to be about feedback, and I didn't want to just say mechanic bad without kind of talking about how mechanic could be good. So my argument here, it's not with the intuning, it's with the entirety of the implementation at its foundational point and how that affects everything else in the game. Snap should not give you multiple infusions. Snap should give you a snap infusion with, you know, varying degrees of power based on what ailments it eats. Living Bomb should give you a bomb infusion. Orb of Storm should give you a storm infusion. Each infusion should do something different to make it better for synergizing with certain skills. For instance, Snap, very, very great skill in general for generating infusions because it's got a very inherently low cast time. It's got a bit of a cooldown, but that's fine because you need to build up ailments on a target to get that payoff in the first place. So Snap, for instance, Snap's infusion would give you added damage, but we'll give it added damage in a way that benefits skills like Spark or Frost Darts or Ember Fusillade, where the general gist of it, or maybe even Firestorm, is you want to hit many times, and Snap's infusion will apply to every individual hit in a single use of the skill. That's immediately an identity that can be different from other infusions, such as Living Bomb. We'll say Living Bomb gives you an infusion that specifically demands a channeling skill, right? And then you set it up to, I don't know, Living Bomb fire skill. Let's stay within the theming. The bomb infusion makes it so that when your next big channeling skill pays off, it'll call down a meteor that will just straight up duplicate the damage. Which is interesting, because Living Bomb takes time to explode. It's very easy to make it explode by killing an enemy, but in a boss fight, you're going to have to wait a while. So the effect can be pretty potent. And the idea here is like a payoff would be Flame Blast. So you do your Living Bomb, it goes off finally on the boss, you get the infusion, which preferably you don't have to pick up, right? It just flies to you like a charge does when you're using, say, Profane Ritual. And you do your big Flame Blast, it goes off, and then the infusion is consumed, and a big-ass meteor comes down and repeats the damage in that area explosion as well. That's cool, right? Snap doing that with these skills is cool. Living Bomb doing that with Flame Blast is cool. What's really cool is if you could do these infusions and then use them with your attacks. Because there's no reason that what the infusion does can't scale with the damage type of the triggering skill. If that makes sense, right? If you're using Rapid Shot to trigger a Snap infusion, there's no reason the infusion added damage isn't now attack damage. Which creates a situation now where any elemental build, right, even if it's an attack build, might look at the elemental tree and say, I want to make use of this. And it creates interesting design decisions from a player's perspective where maybe you want to use Snap Infusion, but you can't get enough int to use the highest level variant of it. So you're like, well, is a level 10 Snap worth it? And honestly, it probably will be worth it because this comes out so quickly. And like a situation where you freeze the boss and you're getting towards the end of the duration, you don't really have another freeze consumption. Snap is now an option where, boom, you get this big added damage component. I would think design-wise, lightning and fire would add like a flat component, and then cold would maybe add a percentage component so that even at lower levels, the cold freeze consumption would be very potent. It would reward you for being able to passively apply ailments even if you don't get a huge benefit from them as well. It's just all these little things that maybe give players more options and more considerations going forward. And then like in the idea of Living Bomb, right? Big meteor comes down. That sounds awesome for Perfect Strike or Supercharged Slam. It's just so many places where you do elemental damage in the game currently, and there's not a giant payoff. And there kind of needs to be, because there's an entire ascendancy called Smith of Kitava that lets you cast fire spells on melee hit. If that lets you like apply Living Bomb and get fire infusions that you could then use with Perfect Strike or other just skills in general, that'd be very cool, right? That's just kind of my general gist of it. Some very basic examples. So my point here is that infusions are backwards, right? If they gave the identity of the infusion to the skill that created it, and then let that trigger apply to any skill of your choice instead of the other way around, you would have way more build diversity, and maybe most importantly, all of the skills in Elementalist right now that are made weaker so that infusions can feel more impactful are now much better. Well, they have to be buffed, but they can be made much better. And that's kind of an issue with the game right now that I find incredibly concerning, that we have all of these infusion generators and a bunch of skills that use them, and if you're not playing with infusions, you probably just can't make those skills viable. That's insanity. That is batshit insane. I'm gonna be aggressive about it. That is crazy, dude. It's not a great situation. So anyway, thank you for sitting through my little bit of feedback. If you're still here, thank you for your attention and your patience. And just, you know, this part of this is in the spirit of talking about infusions. Part of it is also about just encouraging people to give good, thorough feedback and to like throw things at the wall for the developers to like show them what you wish had happened. Because I think infusions as a system had way more potential than what we got. It's just like a small a small change very early in the inception, which admittedly probably would make a lot of work to redo it this way. Maybe not that much work, but like a lot of work in the grand scheme of now they have to rebalance everything, which I would say is unrealistic to expect of them, but also I think they have to rebalance everything anyway. So I would say rebalance it in a way that's going to be more universally agreeable to the player base and create new opportunities for the player base rather than the constrictive thing we currently have. And if you don't want to give thorough feedback, that's fine. Saying something is bad is good enough. It's good feedback because the developers need to know where your pain points are. And you shouldn't be nasty, right? It's an early access game. Let your grievances be heard, and then try not to get super personal about it. And finally, don't get overly upset towards the people venting, right? If you want to tell them their like criticism isn't constructive enough, that's great. But just because your like channel viewership on YouTube is attached to the success of this game doesn't mean you need to come to the defense of it. And doing weird things like calling people tourists, you know, not targeted at anyone in particular, but I mean, that comes off as like elitist or ignorant and maybe a little narcissistic, which is not great for you. We can all be friends. All right, this doesn't need to be a war between two factions. All right, the people who are coming from PO 1, we're not coming with the perspective of make the game Path of Exile 1. We're coming from the perspective of we learned these lessons in Path of Exile 1. Retreading old ground is not without its merit, because sometimes, you know, you see how it goes through the new system and you realize you don't just want to immediately do the new implementation. But with so many things, say the defenses trinity currently, it's very interesting to retread and kind of knuckle down and put a little pressure on the players and be like, all right, what can they do when we set it up this way? We've been playing long enough to realize that if there's going to be a ton of increased energy shield on the tree, there needs to be more like life available on the tree as well, where you're not doing energy shield stuff, because currently people are getting to like 14,000 energy shield versus players who have, you know, 4K life. There's no amount of well, I shouldn't say there's no amount of added damage mitigation, but added damage mitigation has to be extreme, truly extreme, to bridge that gap in a way that players are going to feel and it's going to be okay. Anyway, I've rambled a bit more than I intended to. Have a good one, Exiles. I hope you're enjoying the league. There's definitely a lot to like. For right now, I'm giving feedback. I think Elementalist Infusions has incredible potential, and I would love for GGG to maybe go back to the drawing board on this one, not just because there's a better implementation that will give us more options, but because the current implementation is maybe so unwieldy that they need to go back and rework it anyways. Like, I feel like that's an inevitability, so that's why I went for talking about Infusion specifically. But yeah, that's all. You know, second time in the video. Have a good one, Exiles.